Welcome to the Get Published podcast, sponsored by Brodie Consulting Group. To get more information about our coaching, publishing, executive ghostwriting, and podcast production services, go to getpublishedpodcast.com. Hello, I am Paul Brodie, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Get Published podcast, where we help authors get published with a proven system that works. And today, we're being joined by Lee Silber, author of Time Management for the Creative Person. I definitely need to hear about this one. Lee, welcome to the show.
Happy to be here. I love your show, so I'm honored to be a guest.
Well, Lee, we are thrilled to have you. Are you ready to begin?
Let's do this.
All right.
I feel like I'm on a game show.
All right. Well,
you ready? I'm ready.
Here's your first question for $1,000. What is the one piece of advice that you would give to a first-time author who is currently writing their book?
One thing. Just one thing. All right. If I had to pick one thing, I would say it's about coming up with the right idea, at the right time, with the right title. Like, that's all. Hey, great. That sounds so simple. And then getting out there. And that's the key to this. So if you come up with a great title and it's something timely that people need, or you know they would be interested in reading, and you keep it close to your vest because you're worried someone will steal your idea, that doesn't work. And you'd be so lucky if someone stole your idea. Great, sue them. But you want to get out there. And so when you start doing something, one of your other recent guests said something about they were discovered through YouTube. That means you just get out there, and then what you want is agents and publishers and other authors that want to help you coming to you without you having to go to them. And you do that by getting out there with something really good, really in demand, really cool.
And what do you feel is the hardest part about getting published?
Well, I mean, it's always been, how do I get an agent? I get that question all the time. How do I get an agent? And again, it comes back to what I just said. I mean, they'll find you. Obviously, you have to be proactive and go after an agent and whatnot. But when you build up a following or a platform and you've got your name out there and you're doing something special and different and interesting, you'll get discovered. Talent rises to the top. Things that are timely and that are really valuable also rise to the top. So just get out there, do your thing, with an eye towards how can I, find that perfect agent. It's not just an agent. You want a good agent. That should be clear. Bad agent's no good. You want a good agent.
So looking for a good agent, what are some pieces of advice that you would have specifically? Because you have done books for Penguin, Random House, if I'm not mistaken. So obviously you've been able to find some pretty good agents.
Right. And, I'll talk about Jimmy Buffett later, but, you got to pick who's the favorite author in your genre, or who's doing what you want to do. What book is the book I wish would have written? And then figure out who they think in there as their agent. And in the old days, we'd go to the library or go to the bookstore and look at Literary Marketplace and look them up. But you could easily find that agent and just reach out and say, I'm the next whatever. And the fact that you know what they are interested in or what they publish, that usually they have a specialty. You're doing a children's book, you're going to need a different agent than if you're doing, say, a nonfiction business book. So that's a great way. If those people are thanking that agent for getting them published and they still don't want to disown them, then that's good. They pay them their 50% and they're happy.
Absolutely. And what I've found too is there's a lot of people that look at acknowledgement sections of books, a lot of people utilizing social media. What are some of the best outreach strategies that you have found? You
got to give to get. I mean, it's not if you reach out and say, I need your help. I want something from you. I feel like it's still who you know, but who knows you and who likes you. I mean, agents want to work with people they like and respect and feel that would be fun or they would be easy to work with. You got to be that person. But how do you prove that with just a cold call or a letter? It's you develop a relationship where you write to them and just it's more of a, what can I do for you kind of thing. I know it sounds strange, but it would be something. Maybe you have a specialty that you're an accountant and you could offer your service, whatever it is. It starts with you developing a relationship beyond just, will you represent me and I have a book idea? Because they hear that all the time. I hear that all the time, and I'm not even an agent.
Well, if you don't mind me digging a little bit, what strategy did you use specifically to make those connections? What did you give to be able to build those relationships?
So my story is kind of unique because it was the middle of the summer. I got a call. So I had already had self-published 4 books at this point, and I got invited to go to a group that was meeting up other local authors. By the way, this is my strategy: think global, but start local. So I started with local books, got together with other local authors, and I thought, I don't want to go to this thing. It's summer. It's the middle of the day. I'm going to fight in traffic. We're going to have this long lunch. Ugh. But I go, and I meet a person who says, hey, I have already written a book on organizing. They're looking for somebody. So she couldn't do another book on organizing. So they're looking for someone to do a book on organizing. I had already been known for doing an organizing book, a self-published book. So she says, this is my agent. So I reached out and I said, hey, I'd love to help you with organizing. I'm also referred by Harriet Schechter, that was the person, and I'm a writer. And so she made me jump through all the hoops because she wanted to make sure I was reliable. And so she said, I want you to put together a book proposal. Bam, did it as quickly but as good as I could, got it right to her. I did send her some tips on organizing that she said she used in her office, so I helped her. And I delivered the goods. And sure enough, she got me a 2-book deal and another 2-book deal. So that one lunch was very productive.
Excellent. Let's talk about marketing. So please share a marketing strategy that you have used in your book launches that has worked well.
Well, this was BC, before COVID, but years ago, I signed with a company called Skill Pass Seminars. Because like a lot of authors, I get out there and speak. I like both equally. And so this guy paid me $500 a day back in the early 2000s, and they would send me to different cities to do these programs. So getting paid to travel all over the country. What I would do is I would call well in advance bookstores and set up book signings. Alert the local media, authors coming to town. So I do 5 cities in 5 days. I do 5 Barnes and Nobles or Mayor Borders here and there and whatnot. And that was to launch one of my books. That book did better than all the other books. I put in a lot of time and effort into talking about it, speaking about it. And then when I wasn't on the road with SkillPath, I would go out and speak on my own. And my strategy has always been selling books in the back of the room and pre-selling books to the audience. Well, why don't you buy a book? I'll speak for free, but if you would buy a book for every attendee, 500 attendees, and pay my travel, and that worked so well. I wish those numbers counted, because when you buy books back from the publisher, they don't count so much as a best-selling. You're not listed with the bestsellers on the bestsellers list. But I sold a lot of books that way, and so I started to realize I need to, on my contract, make sure the buyback is always at least 60% or more, so I can buy books at a really low price, sell them at cover, and make a lot of money. I probably made a lot. I made $1.05 per book back then when they were sold through a bookstore, and I made about $9 or $10 when I sold them myself. I mean, it's one of those. If you really believe in yourself and your book, and you just want to tell everyone about it. You want to get out there and make sure everybody knows that it's there. You're not afraid of a no. You know what your book will help them or entertain them or do something for them. So why wouldn't you want to get out there as much as possible and spread the word without being obnoxious?
And I love that you mentioned that too, because that's one of the things I always emphasize with my clients is maximizing your revenue. And you just brought up a great example. You got paid to do a speaking gig, you go to that town, but while you were there, you were also coordinating book signings. And that's one of the strategies that I teach to my clients, is the fact that you can buy author copies of your books through print on demand. You can get them roughly for $3 to $4 each, and then you're selling them for $20. So it's very simple math. You sell 100 books with a $16 profit, you've made $1,600 for about an hour of work. So there's just so many things that you can do to truly monetize your book. But as you say, BC, before COVID.
Well, yeah, and we're adapting, we're learning, we're figuring out ways to do the same thing in a different way. So I'm not giving up on getting quote unquote out there. I'm just doing it through webinars, Zoom calls, and other methods. it's not as lucrative, but I'm also not traveling as much, and so it's fine. It's fine. I always believe there's enough book buyers out there for all of us. The universe will provide if you just put something out there and give it your best shot, and that's my belief. But I just feel some people say, "Well, no one reads anymore. Oh, the bookstores are all gone. Blah blah blah." Why do I even bother with this? Bother. It matters. If you are like me, books are your passion, your life. You can't help but write books. So, and you got to eat. So we got to find a way to both write and sell books. Those two combinations are really important. One without the other doesn't work.
Well, one thing that I've found, and I actually had another guest recently on that was talking about this, and that is actually speaking virtually to different clubs and organizations. And I'll give you an example. I just started my term as president-elect at my Rotary Club, and of course, due to COVID, we are meeting virtually, and one of my duties is to bring in speakers. Well, the cool thing is, I don't have to worry about just local speakers. I could bring in speakers from California, from New York, from Florida, from Arizona, from Chicago, because we can do it virtually. And what you can do, if you're doing it as an author, then you can mention your book, and then you could either put a direct link into your website or to Amazon where they can grab a copy of the book. So there's a few, there's some different things that you can use. It may not be as lucrative, but the thing is, you're not traveling. You're not having to leave the comfort of your own home. As long as you got video, Zoom, and a decent Wi-Fi connection, that is another way that you can get out there and still find ways to monetize your book, and to do it exponentially. So instead of speaking to maybe 10 Rotary Clubs a year, you're speaking to 100, because it's all over the world.
What he said. Yeah, I totally agree. What he said, yes. That's exactly the attitude I have. That's perfect. Great minds think alike.
Well, speaking of books, I'd like to know what is your favorite book, and what was the number one thing that you learned from it?
All right, so I'll just say it. So my favorite book is Tales from Margaritaville by Jimmy Buffett. And then if you're thinking, well, this guy is so shallow. Really? That's his favorite book? It's not so much the book. It's just the story of Jimmy Buffett. And, there's a lot of publishing lessons that you can learn from Jimmy Buffett. And he is, let me just say this. So he took one song that wasn't even a number one hit. Margaritaville only got to number 8 on the charts. And he built an empire around that one song that included best-selling books. And I think he's one of only 6 or 7 authors that have a number one bestseller in both fiction and nonfiction. But what I learned from Jimmy Buffett is you got to get out there. And so he toured constantly. And then he built a brand that had value. He sold escapism, which people were desperate for. And then he had a huge following. The Parrot Heads are the most loyal fans, one of the most loyal fans an artist can find. And then he started small. He started with this little newsletter. Then he did 2 children's books, then a book of short stories, then a novel, then a memoir, and off you go. And he also, this will surprise people, he's a really hard worker. I know everyone thinks, well, he's always drinking margaritas and on a boat. No, he's a smart and shrewd businessman. And when you're a self-published author, you're running a business. It's not just you're a writer and it's your hobby or it's my art. It's a business. So I learned all that from Jimmy Buffett. Do I want to be Jimmy Buffett? No, but he's my role model, I guess. And so I ask myself, what would Jimmy Buffett do? And sure, every once in a while I'll pour myself a drink. But most of the time I get a good answer. And you can do that with any author that's someone said John Grisham on an earlier show. And yeah, you could learn a lot from him. The way he started out with his car driving around selling books out of the back, that's inspiring. So long answer to a short question. Sorry.
Well, and that's with other groups too. It reminds me, like with the Grateful Dead and with the Rolling Stones, is they truly ran it like a business and basically built an empire that, yeah, the main avenue of that was going to be touring, but it's also what they built alongside with that.
Many artists made as much off of their merchandise than they did from the gate, so or their album sales. So I agree with you. I mean, you could pick any writer, artist, business person to what would Steve Jobs do if he was in my shoes? And then you get a good answer. I mean, he would innovate. He would come up with something that would change the world. He would do something that looks cool but yet is functional. I mean, those are all Steve Jobs traits. So pick somebody that you admire and use them to help shorten the path. Follow in their wake. Just do what they did, and maybe, but with your own spin.
Absolutely. And for a final question, what is your favorite quote and why?
See, because this is a book about, or a show about publishing, I'm going to say it's from a person that I actually interviewed. I did a publishing panel. I had agents and publishers and myself and a few others, and she came about 20, 30 years ago and said, I want to write a book about my life. I've lived the most interesting life. And her name was Sunshine Blake. And I became friends with her. And for 25 years, she never wrote a word. I would say, how's your book coming? Oh, I just can't do it. I'm too busy living my life. I said, well, why don't you just talk it into a tape recorder and we can transcribe it? No. Anyway, she calls me and says, I'm dying, and I want you to write my life story. And I did. I wrote it as a memoir/novel. And so her quote was from her book, from the book. See, I'm promoting my own book. The book's called Sunshine. My biggest regret is not writing a book about my life. Because she had things she wanted to pass on. She didn't want her life to not be remembered in some way, and she didn't want her life lessons to not be applied to other people's lives. So don't let not writing your book be something you regret later in life.
Well, Lee, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show. What is the best way for people to find you online?
LeeSilber.com, LeeSilber, LeeSilber.com.
Well, Lee, thank you once again for being on the show, and I wish you all the best in your author journey ahead.
Thank you.
Thanks again for joining us today. To learn more about how to get your book published with a proven system that works, grab a free copy of my book at getpublishedpodcast.com.